So I call the meeting to order. As a preliminary matter, this is Irfan Nasrullah, Select Board Vice Chair. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Brian Herr? Not here yet. Mary Jo Lafreniere?
Present.
Amy Ritterbush?
Here.
And here. Brendan Tedstone is not here yet. He is expected to join us shortly. Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Norman Kamalo?
Here.
Lane Lazarus?
Here.
Additional speakers this evening may include Chuck Joseph, Tim Koldoff, Kelly Grill, Mike Shepard, Dave Delatorio, Peter Lavoie, Carol Kavanaugh, Susan Rothamich, and Amanda Fargiano. If there is anyone attending who would like to speak during the public forum portion of the agenda, you must notify the meeting host in advance. You may do this by using the raise hand feature of Zoom. This open meeting of the Hopkinton Select Board is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's Executive Order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of COVID-19 virus, we're complying with the executive order that suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. All members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The executive order, which you can find posted with the agenda materials for this meeting, allows for public bodies to meet entirely remotely as long as the public body makes provisions through adequate alternative means to ensure interested members of the public are provided reasonable access to the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless participation is required by law. For this meeting, the Select Board is convening by video conference via Zoom webinar, as posted on the town's web meeting calendar in the board's agenda identifying how the public may join. Additionally, the meeting may also be broadcast by HCAM through one or many of its channels or platforms. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that some attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that others may be able to see you. Take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. We're now turning to the first item on the agenda. But before we do, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair or vice chair will invite board members to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you're not speaking, and please remember to speak clearly in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in dialogue with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. Not every agenda item will feature public comment. For the public forum portions of the agenda, the chair will work with the meeting host to call on each pre-registered speaker to make their comment. Each speaker must begin by identifying their name and address. Each speaker will have up to 2 minutes for their comments. Please use the raise hand feature of Zoom now to indicate that you would like to make a comment. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by a roll call vote. Before we begin, let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America,
to the republic
which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, is there any member of the public who wishes to speak? If so, please use the raise hand feature of Zoom, and when called on, identify yourself by name and address first. Okay. Let's see. I do not see anyone with their hand raised. However, I'm not quite used to doing this, so if anyone sees somebody who with a hand raised.
I don't see anyone either. Although Miss Barath had mentioned she might come, but I don't see her.
I don't see her here. Okay. Then we shall move on to the consent agenda. The board will consider approving the consent agenda consisting of approval of the minutes of the April 6th and April 13th, 2021 select board meetings, and designate the week of April 4th through 10th, 2021 as National Library Week, and Tuesday, April 6th, 2021 as National Library Workers' Day. Board members, would you like to break out any items for a separate vote?
I just had a question. Those dates seem to be in the past. The library week.
They certainly do.
But I don't have the objection to designating them. It just seems too late.
That seems correct. Well, then I would request a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Here a second.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion that's been seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. How do you vote, Mr. Herr?
Or yes.
Mr. Fernier?
Fernier, yes.
Ms. Ritterbusch?
Ritterbusch, yes.
And Mr. Nasrullah, yes. Okay, so that passes. Moving on to the next agenda item, name request. The board will review a request from Chuck Joseph to consider approving a street name for the new Hopkinton Village Center residential development behind 23 and 35 Main Street. The request was submitted for Hoyt's Run, but it has been modified and is now Hoyt's Way. A map showing the location was included in the board's packet, and the permitting team has no adverse comments on the proposal. The street is a private condominium way, and assigning a street name to such roads is common practice in Hopkinton and aids with emergency response. Chuck Joseph, do you have any details, new additional details that about your request?
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. No, I think when I submitted the request, we wanted to pay tribute to Dick Hoyt, who passed recently and who has been such a inspiration to this community over some 35 or 40 years, as I understand it. We were originally talking about naming it Hoyt's Run. We were able to interact with the Hoyt family, who requested that we use the term Hoyt singular way. And we would like to just modify our request for that name.
Okay. Board members, do you have any questions? Mr. Herr?
I think it's a great idea. Thanks.
Ms. Lafreniere?
But the Hoyts have meant to this town, it's fine with me. I think it's great.
Ms. Ritterbusch?
No, I think it sounds very good, and we don't have a street already with that name, so it's perfect.
From my perspective, I think it's a wonderful sentiment. I think it means an awful lot, and I think the Hoyt family is well represented, and this is a fantastic idea. Mr. Kilduff, would you like to speak on the comment letter that you submitted to the board?
Just to congratulate Mr. Joseph and Mary Jo in particular has had experience interfacing with the Hoyts through her many years of work on the Marathon Committee, and she knows this is a heartfelt request, and I just applaud all of you for moving this forward.
Thank you. I echo your sentiments, and I think it is extremely appropriate here. I request a motion to approve the name Hoyt Way for the Hopkinton.
Don't move.
Second.
I'm moving early.
Let me read the full motion.
Okay.
So I request a motion to approve the name Hoyt Way for the Hopkinton Village Center residential development in a location depicted on the submitted plan.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. How do you vote, Mr. Herr?
Yes.
Ms. Lafreniere?
Yes.
Ms. Ritterbush?
Ritterbush, yes.
Mr. Tedstone is still not here, and Nasrullah, yes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
We appreciate
Thank you.
it. All right, moving on. The Hopkinton Center for the Arts request for authorization to file a waiver request with the MAAB. The board will consider a request from the HCA to file on behalf of the town an application to the Massachusetts Architectural Access Board requesting a variance not to construct an accessibility ramp on the south side of the building and a time variance to delay the installation of a lift to the second floor of the farmhouse. Staff recommends that the select board reject the request to apply for a variance pertaining to.
Say hello to Guinness Nitro Cold Brew Coffee Beer.
Well, hello.
What was that all about?
Somebody's thirsty, huh? Sorry about that. Let me make sure that does not happen again. Close that bracket. All right. Staff recommends that the select board reject the request to apply for a variance pertaining to the accessibility ramp. Doing so would amount to continuing to condemn a vulnerable segment of our residents to using a back entrance into the building, one that is not welcoming. However, staff does not object to the select board authorizing the application for a time variance regarding the lift, so long as any future extensions of said time variance, if granted by the MAAB, are first reviewed and authorized by the select board. Mr. Kamala?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, through you, as you have read, staff is recommending against authorizing the first variance. From my perspective, in the days we live in, especially following the pledge that was adopted by the select board, inclusivity is a primary goal of ours. And it is against that background that I request your authority to invite Mike Shepard from the Inspectional Services to further expand on why staff is objecting to or is recommending against the select board authorizing the first variance. However, we are not objecting to the application for the second variance relating to the lift, so long as if the board is inclined to approve this, add a condition that will require the HCA to come before the select board for any extension applications. But again, it is against the background of the pledge that we adopted as a community, emphasizing and prioritizing inclusivity, that I support the staff position recommending against applying for the first variance. Mike Shepard is here to elaborate.
Mike?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me, sir?
I can hear you. Can't see.
All right. As you may recall, or perhaps not, the town purchased Terry property back in 1995. I was on the initial building committee for the Cultural Arts Alliance. That's what it was called then, back from 1996 to 1999. During that time, my son and I did a lot of work on the building. In fact, we built the access ramp on the back because that's all they could afford at the time. And the promise was, we'll do it right when we get money. We did a lot of work, and now we're 25 years later, and the Architectural Access Board requires that they have access to the space. They have it through the back, around a dumpster in the back door right now. My problem is I go back to the history of the thing and all the work we did. The promise was we'll do it right when we get money. In fact, right now they have the money. They have the money in the budget to build the ramp, and I think they should do it. As a little bit of history, back 3 or 4 months ago, the historical committee didn't want the ramp on the front of the building. They didn't want to change the door. They didn't want to change the way it was presented from the street. And we were okay with that. We understood it. We met with the staff, we met with the architect, and we came up with a plan to access the building from the side. And therefore the accessibility part would work for us. The front would still work for the Historic Commission, and it worked great for everybody. And then about a month ago, they came out and said, geez, we'd like to apply to the Actual Access Board for a variance not to put this thing in now because, you know, for whatever reason, because it only accesses the first floor. And at the time, we said at a meeting with Dave and the applicant to the Access Board that, no, that wouldn't work. You put it off for 25 years. It's a town asset. It's a great asset, no question about it. But it's about time you realize that the people, particularly the handicapped people, have a right to enter through the front door. And that's pretty much it, sir. As far as the lift, we're okay with putting off the lift because it's kind of a time-sensitive thing. The access to the second floor, as I understand it now, they provide music lessons, but if somebody is handicapped, they can accommodate them either on the first floor or in the new part of the HCA. So I'm not too concerned about that because I know that will happen at some point. But getting an entrance at a place where everybody else goes is tantamount to our issues. Now, thank you, sir. I'll ask any questions. I'm fine.
Thank you. Board members, do you have any comments on what you just heard, Mr. Hurd?
So, Mike, is it your understanding that they're going to be putting another building between the front house, which is what we're talking about here? We're not talking about the new space that was done in the barn and the addition there, but in the front house. Are you comfortable they'll be doing that additional building that connects the front house to the new barn at some point in the future?
Yeah, yes, sir. That is my understanding. That was a plan, you know, at least 5 years in the future. However, the access to be gained for the next 5 years, or at least in the interim, for those people on the first floor, that access will remain no matter what they do in the middle. Also, there's some consideration about if we put this addition between the barn and the farmhouse, we may not need the lift at that point. And I can understand that because they may have access from the second floor of the new building, which already has a lift, and they can access it that way. But it won't, suffice the issue as far as handicapped access to the first floor. I've actually heard this story. We'll do it someday. And now is the time to do it. They have the money, there's no question. There's just, now's the time to do it.
So it's my understanding that to do the ramps, and I think it would be then a second ramp, like in the front on the south side, to your point, and then there's the one on the back side that's probably not ideal, obviously. To add that is about a $60,000 number. Does that make sense to you?
Well, I understand it was closer to 45. It was an ad alternate, the original bid. And I saw the bid numbers, and the bid numbers came within range of the money they had. So yes, it does make sense.
If they were going to do this other building 5 years out, and they could find a way with architects and code to make sure it all complies with access, accessibility, to Mr. Kamalo's point, would we be okay with a temporary access ramp for the next few years?
Would we be you and the Board of Selectmen, or me?
We be the town.
It's been 25 years we've owned this building, and they've leased it for probably 24 of those. And it's time we actually do it. We can't put it off any further, at least in my opinion. Yes, we could do the addition in 5 years. There's no guarantee we'll do the addition in 5 years. And I'm speaking as somebody that used to be on the accessibility board when we had one in town, and this is the thing we should be doing. They're not second-class citizens. We can't expect them to go through the back door all the time, and it's just something we do. And it was in the bid document, so it isn't something it's a shock and anything to the Cultural Arts Alliance. We'll work with them as we always have, It's time to do it. So essentially, go ahead.
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry.
Go ahead, Mike.
What'll happen is when they apply for the variance, they'll go to the Architectural Access Board, and the Architectural Access Board will send a letter to us at the building department. What do you think about this? And that's what, you know what we think about it. Then they'll make the decision or have a hearing. That's the way it works. But they're spending over $400,000 on this improvement to the building, and it easily triggers the accessibility requirements of the Architectural Access Board. And again, I absolutely recognize this is an outstanding facility and it's great. We've been cooperative all the way through the line, but it's about time they fessed up and did it right. And that's just my 2 cents, sir. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I get it. So I was on the building committee after you that did the barn restoration to maintain the integrity of the barn, so that then they could come in with CP and CPC and everything else and do the full blowout that Chuck Joseph and a lot of other people drove in town. So I get the history, and certainly on that side of the building and in that whole area, it is fully accessible as required by state and local code. I'm just trying to find a way to not spend this other 50 grand if in fact they're going to connect these things and someday there'll be full access on that first floor from both sides of the building. But if like that's why I'm asking about a temporary ramp instead of a full-blown permanent ramp on that side. That's kind of where my head is at. And it's taxpayers' money. It's CPC money. That's the 400 Gs he's talking about. So anything we can do to save some money, but still give access to Mike's point, to Norman's point, I think is important. I have seen this HCA, Mike keeps, it's true, that front building is a 150-year-old building or whatever it is. And the town has had it for a long time, but all the work was done in the back, in the barn, and then everything new on the barn. And now they're coming to the front, and they're coming to the front to do this work with the expectation they're going to connect the front to the new barn facility in another building in a few years' time. And I guess that's where the question sits, because if we do that connection in a few years' time, this 50 grand now could be for naught, because they're going to have to do other stuff to make all that work seamlessly. So that's the only thing I'm hung up on is, are we going to spend 50 grand for 5 years' time? I mean, I know that maybe they won't do that connection someday. Maybe something will happen, and who knows? But that's kind of where my head's at. Thank you.
Ms. Lafreniere, any comment? Okay. Ms. Ritterbush, do you have any comment?
I just wanted to clarify, let's see, so the front door on Hayden Road, that's the historic looking one that is not really used much, that would stay the same. We're talking about adding a ramp on the parking lot side, correct? Which is the entrance most people use. Sorry. I think I tend to agree with Mr. Shepard that it would be good to make that side accessible, and once that's done, that wouldn't need to be changed if they add the connector on the back later, right?
Yeah, I'm sorry. The connector on the back needs work to be upgraded because it was a quick down and dirty thing 20 years ago. So the plan is to upgrade that as well. But the connector on the parking lot side is correct. It was all in an effort to keep the front facade the way it looks today, and that was important. And by putting the door coming onto the porch and then from the porch down the ramp, we were able to do that. That was the plan at any rate.
Okay, thank you.
I had a question. Well, when I was reading this and I was reading all the backup material, my question for tonight had been, are we going to have good handicapped accessible information and just a good handicapped accessibility to the building? And the one in the back just doesn't seem to do it. So now I hear Mr. Shepard tonight, and I would be inclined to agree with him.
So 2 people have their hands raised, I think. Just
is this a public hearing? I don't believe it is.
It's not, you can certainly call on folks if you want to, Mr. Chair, but you're not obligated to.
All right. I'm going to just go through the rest of the board members before we go to the public. So I see Mr. Tedstone's on the line. Did you have a chance to hear anything, and do you have any comment?
Oh, sorry, Irfan. I just everything's pretty sporadic up here, so I just caught basically the last 15 seconds before you went to a vote. So I'm gonna not get involved in this one.
Okay, so from my perspective, I think I understand what Mr. Hur is saying, and I actually agree with it that we don't want to put $50,000 into a ramp that's only going to be rebuilt 5 years later. But at the same time, I take the pledges to heart that we want to be inclusive to everyone, and I think that if there were some type of temporary option until to access the building from the front until a more permanent structure could be built in 5 years, that would certainly sound like something that I could be on board with. But to make people just go around back and use kind of the back entrance just seems a little demeaning in my mind. So that's kind of where I fall on this.
Mike, Mr. Chair, if I could ask Mr. Shepard another question. So Mike, do you think a temporary would work, or is that going to be problematic for the folks to access?
I think there are a couple of things involved, Mr. Hare. The door, instead of coming out the front, will come out the side by that little porch.
Yeah.
The porch floor would have to be raised about 10 inches in order to make it accessible. So that would have to happen whether it was a permanent ramp or a temporary ramp. So you have the door relocation, you have raising the porch. They'd put the balustrades back from the street. It would look exactly the same, at least in my mind. And the ramp could come down the side. And yeah, it could be, I would be okay with it was temporary, providing it was accessible. And whether or not from a perspective of restoring an old farmhouse, whether we want to look at an aluminum ramp for the next 5 years or not, and it could be longer. I'm not sure that's the right way to go. All of this was an attempt to save the front facade for the Historic Commission, which I think we've done. The door would be on the side and the ramp would go down the side. Ironically, we talked about this same ramp 20 years ago, and it was expensive. It was expensive then, and the ramp in the back was cheaper. That's why we did it. So, if the ramp, an accessible ramp, were temporary or permanently okay, we still have to rent the aluminum ramp for whatever that costs for 5 years. And I'm not sure what that cost would be, but I would okay as long as it's accessible. That's the main thing.
Okay. So we wouldn't need to go, Mr. Chair, for a variance. I don't think you'd have to have a variance, Mike, in order to approve a temporary one if they could prove that it would be fully accessible, right? That we could do it locally?
That's correct, sir.
Well, I believe that we need to approve of the HCA going to the Mass Architectural Board.
The members from the HCA, I think, are trying to raise their hands if you wanted to entertain
Yeah, so
comments.
being new with this, I'm going to ask the board members. Are we going to hear from? I think it would be helpful to hear from the people with their hands raised. Are we all on board with that?
Yes, or I am.
So the first hand I see raised is Scott Richardson. Bob, can you liven him up? Scott, you there? I see you.
I'm getting there. I guess I was rejoined or something.
All right, there we go.
Hi. So things like this are never simple. What we are looking to do is, again, look at a time delay, not only for the lift, but potentially for the ramp as well. I'm not sure if I can share my screen, but I could show you kind of the master plan of what we're envisioning there in the upcoming years, which may be helpful to talk about the current conditions as well as the future conditions, and not wanting to do work that then has to be undone. Another comment is the existing ramp to the rear of the building is actually being rebuilt as part of the upgrades being funded by CPC. And the dumpster has now been removed and moved to the back of the lot, and the fencing is coming down if it hasn't come down already. Kelly can comment on that. So that we are able now to actually put a handicap parking space right by the building, which will then have direct access to the improved access ramp to the back. So we're actually enabling anybody that is handicapped to have better access to the ramp that is being rebuilt in the back of the building, if you will. Interestingly, that ramp accesses the center of the house as it stands. So you actually, anybody that is entering has better access to the whole first floor versus, again, constructing a ramp to the front porch, which would bring you into the front hallway, which again, then you have further to travel, if you will, to get to, say, the ceramics studio. Again, I don't know if you want me to share my screen or whether there's a time limitation here or what.
Irfan, you're muted.
We want to keep things moving along, but I think that might be helpful for us all to see. Board members, you all on board with that? Go ahead, Scott.
So everybody see that? And again, it is kind of a quick sketch, but it's what we're envisioning. This is the existing Terry farmhouse right now. The front porch that we are talking about building a new ramp here and coming up to. And again, the whole first floor of the Terry house is devoted to ceramics. This is the existing barn that's been renovated, and this is obviously the addition with the performance hall. So in yellow, what you're seeing is the conceptual idea for the connector building, where we would be able to enter at grade from the parking area, have access directly to the barn, but also then have an internal ramped access to the Terry farmhouse, because the Terry farmhouse is elevated about 30 inches or so above grade. As part of this, we're expanding and providing dance studios and some additional program space. Then we are able to also then connect on an upper level via a balcony viewing down to dance, which would then have access to the lift and then provide accessibility to the second floor of the Terry farmhouse. So again, conceptually, that's what the concept is for the near future. So to build another ramp out here, again, we would prefer not to expend that funding at this point. Any questions on this? And I can stop sharing.
Board members? Anyone? So my question is, the ramp that we see there, the proposed ramp by the front porch, if we were to do it now, why would that need to be thrown away and in 5 years? Why can't we just build it now?
Can I answer that?
Go ahead.
Okay. So there's two, it's really about what the use of the building is going to be for. So the entire first floor is a ceramic studio. The second floor are individual music rooms. So we are actually proposing to not have a ramp there because it probably would never be used. There wouldn't be any reason that someone with accessibility issues would want to use that door. As Scott mentioned, it's it's a much more logical and comfortable access coming into the center of the building. The way the layout is of the farmhouse, coming in that door would really only be for people who are accessing the stairs that are right there. It's just not logical. So to really, that's the bottom line for this, is that expending this funding for something that really is not useful, especially given the ultimate goal of building the next building. The other thing I want to say is the HC is all about accessibility, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. That in no way are we looking to be less accessible. We are really committed to that and always will be. And I appreciate all of you who have worked so hard on this for 25 years. I've only been here for 10. The HC has only existed for 10. And in the last 10 years, I think we've been pretty successful in raising the funds to build these buildings. And I have every expectation that we'll be able to do that again. Really what we're looking for is the okay to go in front of the MAAB to ask their opinion on whether this feels excessive as far as putting two fairly expensive ramps on a 2,700 square foot building.
Understood. Thank you. There's one other person with a hand raised. That would be Mike DiMascio. Can you liven him up? Mike, you're on.
He's muted.
Mike, unmute yourself.
Yes, I would be the one that would be taking this before the MAAB, the Massachusetts Architectural Access Board. As part of that process, we had to go to the Metro West Independent Living Center. They came out to the building, looked at what we were proposing, and they've indicated they will be providing us a letter saying that what we're asking for is reasonable, given that the connector is built in the near future. My understanding, it's supposed to be 3 to 5 years. I don't think the access, when they write regulations, they try to make them meet the requirements for all buildings. But in some instances, it's just unreasonable. And that's the whole reason for the variance process. To have 2 ramps serving basically what will be 1,700 square feet because of not having access to the second floor, or having alternative compliance by having accessible access in the barn instead of having them access the second floor is, basically, in my opinion, unreasonable to have 2 ramps serving that one building. And that is why HCA is basically asking to take this to the MAAB. They're the ones that have the special expertise in these issues. And I think that I would be surprised if they don't support the request from HCA.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Board members, do you have any?
If I may?
Sure, Mr. Marlowe.
Thank you. Having listened to every comment, I just want to be sure I'm hearing this correctly. We may have all the technical reasons for providing this ramp unreasonable, costly, and something that can be temporary. I think what I need everybody to hear loud and clear is that because this is a town-owned building, we want to do the right thing. But sometimes doing the right thing might be costly. It might sound unreasonable. It might sound illogical. But by the end of the day, when we have to do the right thing, especially for a segment of our population that is most vulnerable, that we've promised for 25 years that we're going to give them this access. I'm also encouraged by the fact that this is a first-class facility in town. And I really ask the board to do the right thing. Yes, I understand there might be technical reasons, very convincing reasons. We may be concerned about cost. But I'm not convinced that we are guaranteed that there will be an addition in 5 years' time. I'm not convinced that when that addition, if it does occur, that the ramp is the only thing from this project that may, for now, be the thing that we may not need going forward. There may be other aspects of that building that may not be needed if that addition is put in place. And the questions that we're going to be asked is, why is it that the ramp is the one that we want to sacrifice and not other things in the building? Again, I'm asking that we all think about doing the right thing.
Thank you. We've gone through quite a bit of comment here. I'm going to ask the board members, do we want to, anybody, you want to respond to any of the comments that you heard, or should we move forward to a vote? Mr. Hurd?
Yeah.
So the 400K, has that already been appropriated by town meeting for CPC or through CPC? So that's already in the bank. So it's not like we could change the motion for this upcoming CPC vote or anything like that. Give them another 50 grand. Okay. No, Mr. Kamalo doesn't advocate like he just did very often, so I'm all set. Thanks.
Ms. Lavernia?
Mike, no, Scott, can you show that picture again and show me where the handicap ramp is right now
I think that would be helpful to see what's in
of the building?
So right now, the handicap ramp is right about here, because there's areas here, the back kitchen area and the kiln are not part of the future expansion. So the existing ramp is right about here. There's a new part that we'll be able to, again, because the dumpsters have been removed, be able to have a parking space right here and be able to have access via the existing ramp. The new ramp, okay, sorry.
No, I was gonna say, when you come in there, because a lot of times I've been to meetings upstairs, so the handicap people have to come in, and how do they find their way to the lift?
So again, right now, they cannot access the lift from the Terry farmhouse. To get to the lift, to access the second floor of the barn, you would enter the main lobby space of the HCA. And the lift is right here.
And the main lobby space is ground level, right?
Correct.
So
And
that's kind of another handicap entrance that you could use.
So this is, yeah, so this new entrance, again, is at ground level, grade level, and would then access the lift this way. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
If I could, through the chair.
Sure.
So where would the ramp be that you don't want to construct at this time?
So right now, we're proposing the proposed ramp, which again, actually has come in over budget. There is no funding mechanism for it right now, is essentially right here. It would come up alongside the driveway and then turn and come onto the porch. And we are creating a new door, which unfortunately is not shown right now, into the front entry so that we can maintain the historic double doors that are on the front of the building.
I had thought there was another entrance a little bit further back on the old farmhouse.
Yes, there is one right here.
But it would be covered by this new addition later.
Correct. That's correct.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I would be inclined to not support the request to go to the MMAB or whatever the acronym is, with the understanding that we take a long, hard look at this temporary ramp and try and save some taxpayer money, but also provide the access that folks need for the next few years. I think the HCA's business model is strong, and their investment in that facility has obviously been demonstrated. And I feel very good about the addition coming, but I understand the need for accessibility to Mr. Kamala's and Mr. Shepard's point. right away. So I think that would be a reasonable compromise. If we can't make the temporary thing work, we can't make it work, and we're gonna have to spend the money. But I want to support, our team that's taking a long, hard look at this. But I also think a temporary might be a reasonable way to kind of figure this out. And if in 2 or 3 years' time, that doesn't get, that addition is going to go away for whatever reason, then the future boards, as the landlord, has a meeting with the HCA and says, folks, it's time to put a real ramp in.
Is there a way to split this that we can not support the ramp portion, but support the lift, putting the lift off for a little while?
Well, I think that's
Mr. Nasrullah, I need to just quickly interrupt. It's 6:45. We have a public hearing. So I'll accept a motion from the board to open the town hearing for the public asset name for the Hughes Farm Trail.
So moved.
Second.
Second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. How do you vote, Mr. Nasrullah?
Nasrullah, yes.
Mr. Herr?
Herr, yes.
Ms. Lafreniere?
Lafreniere, yes.
Ms. Ritterbusch?
Ritterbusch, yes.
Headstone, yes. And I'm going to table this until we're done speaking on this item here.
Okay.
Is that acceptable to you, Mr. Kamalo and Mr. Lagoy?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, so I think we've all kind of heard all sides of this. We've seen the presentation. So in that case, I'm going to move to I'm going to request a motion to approve the submission of the applicant to the MAAB for a variance not to construct an accessibility ramp on the south side of the building.
Arizona, silent.
Okay, I do not hear a motion on that. I'm going to request a motion to approve the submission of an application to the MAAB for a time variance to delay the installation of a lift to the second floor of the farmhouse.
So moved.
Second.
How do we, Mr. Herr?
I'm confused.
There was no motion to approve of the submission of the variance on the accessibility ramp. There was no motion, so we moved on to the next item.
So there was no motion, so we're hoping some kind of temp thing might be able to get worked out, and if not, we got to do what we got to do. Okay.
Right.
On the lift, so then the next motion is to approve a variance for the lift, not to do that.
This is the time delay.
Or allow the HCA to go for the lift variance.
The time variance on the lift, yeah.
The time variance on
Not
the
that would never happen, but that.
And our
Yeah.
team and the town's team is okay with that.
Yes. Mr. Kamalo, I don't want to speak for the town. Mr. Kamalo, the town's team is
Through the chair, staff do support and recommend to the board allowing the variance for the time variance to delay the installation of a lift to be submitted to the MAAB.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Herr, how do you vote?
Herr, yes.
Ms. Lafreniere?
Lafreniere, yes.
Ms. Ritterbusch?
Ritterbusch, yes.
Jensen?
I'll abstain.
And Nasrullah, yes. Okay, thank you. I'm going to hand over the reins to the chair for the next agenda item.
Mr. Nasrullah, thank you very much for stepping in. I apologize for my poor wireless. I do not have wireless at my cabin up on the Quebec border in Maine. So I did have to walk over to my neighbors, and he and she both graciously allowed me to sit in their living room and utilize their wireless, therefore not jeopardizing my perfect attendance record as a selectman and select board member going on my 6th year.
Then
So the board will review a request from the Trail Coordination and Management Committee to name the trail on the town-owned open space parcels off 192 Hayden Road, the Hughes Farm Trail. Peter Lagoy, chair of the TCMC, will join the board and present the request. Mr. Lagoy.
You're muted.
And I am also going to have to mute sporadically here because I have 5 kids running around occasionally like maniacs. So I will occasionally be muted as well.
Peter, you're muted.
The bottom left, Peter, of your screen.
You hover your mouse to the bottom left, then it'll appear and you can click unmute. There you go.
Oh, still can't hear me.
Yeah, something's not right.
Yeah.
All right, so we're obviously having some technical difficulties. Does anyone from the board, according to anything, anyone on the board?
Can you hear me now?
Oh, there you go.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, my computer does not have audio generally. Ongoing problem. It does it for a week and then it's gone again. So, and that's my work computer. So I do a lot of meetings this way. So we came up with the idea we actually have been calling the new trail that we're constructing there, which is the new Stone Dust Trail, about 0.4 miles. We've been calling it the Hughes Trail. At our September 2020 meeting, one of the descendants of the Hughes suggested the Hughes Farm Trail, and our committee thought that was a much better name because it indicates the use of the land. There's a fairly large old farm field back there, and the name the Hughes Farm Trail signifies what land is available back there along the trail. The trail that's been put in goes along an old farm road. The Hughes family has been on that land, or was in the land. They sold the land to the town in about 2015, and they farmed the land for about 70 years before that. You can talk to older folks around town, and they'll have anecdotal stories of working down on that farm. From a cultural perspective, Dave Hughes was a football coach for a long time in Hopkinton. So for all those reasons, our committee thought this was a great name for that trail. What we're trying to do is get these trails named so that we can now start pointing people to go to these resources. And particularly during the time of COVID, people are looking for places to get outside, this certainly being one of them. So we've completed a stone dust trail similar to what is at the center trail. As I said, 0.4 miles. At the back end of that, it connects on an old farm cart road almost to Joseph Road. And an Eagle Scout project is ongoing right now to make that pedestrian connection over to Joseph. Amy's pretty aware of a couple of side trails that come off this trail because her son did those 2 trails as part of his Eagle project. So this is a nice area, nice resource for the town. And a lot of people are starting to use it, and I think it'll get a lot more use going forward. So what we're looking for from you folks is naming that trail, the Hughes Farm Trail. And I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Lagoy. So as the person in town that's probably, person on the board that has the most historical time spent in the town, I can tell you that everything that you said is spot on accurate. The Hughes family did farm that. That was right down the street from my grandparents' house when I was a little kid. And we all call it the Hughes Trail now. And I think it's very appropriate, and I think it's fitting to rename it or to officially call it the Hughes Farm Trail. Board members, do you have any questions quickly for Mr. Lagoy, or can we move on?
I don't know.
I agree totally. Hughes has been here since I've been in town. I've known Hughes, and I think that it's a good Hopkinton name, and I think it gives some credit to the farm and what Hopkinton was, a farming community. So I'm all for it.
Excellent. So, Mr. Kamala, do I need to have a motion to close the public hearing, or do I need to go to the public? My script is not really to exist for that.
If there are members of the public interested in commenting, please.
Yes, if there are members of the public, please hit the raise hand button. And I can't see it on my phone. Are there any?
Not see any.
No.
No.
So I will request a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
Coach Hughes was at the football game on Sunday afternoon here in Hopkinton. He looks great.
Coach Hughes is one of the greatest people to ever have lived in the town of Hopkinton. I tell you that through 40 years of interaction with that gentleman, and his sisters too. His sisters are great nurses. So hearing none, Mr. Nasrullah, how do you vote to close the public hearing?
Nasrullah, yes.
Mr. Herr,
Yes.
Ms. Lafreniere,
Bernier, yes.
Ms. Ritterbusch,
Ritterbusch, yes.
Headstone, yes. So board, do we have any deliberation on this, or can we go right to a motion?
I'm good with the motion.
I'll request a motion to approve the name Hughes Farm Trail for the trail on the land off Hayden Row as shown on the submitted plan.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Nasrullah, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Herr,
Yes.
Lafreniere,
Bernier, yes.
Ritterbusch,
Ritterbusch, yes.
Headstone, yes. Thank you, Mr. Lagoy, and thank you to the Hughes family, and thank you to everybody else.
Yeah.
The performance evaluation. What? I'm sorry, am I missing something?
No, thank you. That was it.
Okay. Performance evaluation process, town manager, police chief, and fire chief. We will discuss the annual performance evaluation process for the town manager, police chief, and fire chief. Mr. Kamalu.
I believe, Mr. Chair, you are working on the issue together with Maria Casey, the Human Resources Director.
Yep, so I'm going to turn it over to Maria for the dates. This is, Maria and I have discussed this and can come up with some dates that I find to be workable timeframe wise. Maria, if you will take it away and kind of let us know what the dates are that you and I agreed to, and we'll go from there.
Certainly, Mr. Chair. Similar to the past, the HR director provides the select board with the prior year goals and the police chief, fire chief, and town manager self-assessment for their review. The select board members provide the HR director with their written feedback individually, and the HR director will compile all of the feedback and draft the performance review for the meeting of May 18th, 2021, where the select board will formally evaluate the town manager, police chief, and fire chief. Thereafter, on or about the meeting of June 1st, the select board would then discuss the FY22 goals for the town manager, police chief, and fire chief.
Okay.
I'm sorry,
and
Maria, what was that?
Mr. Herr, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Maria, I missed that second date. The first date's inside my term, but what was the second date?
On or about June 1st, the next select board meeting.
Yeah, that makes sense to have the new board do it. Okay.
Thank you.
So we discussed goals and assessment. That is going to get to us by when?
As soon as possible.
Okay. And then I think the time frame for the board to take a look at that and have it back would be, what did we say? Did we say the May 4th or did we say May 11th?
Yeah, the board then has approximately 2 weeks to,
okay, so we'll say May, What's 2 weeks from today?
2 weeks from today is May 4th.
So why don't we plan on getting that back to you by May 4th? That will give you enough time to compile all the information that we need and get everything ready for us for the 18th. Does that give you enough time for that?
Yes, it does.
Uh-oh.
Mr. Herr?
Mr. Chair, we missed most of what you just said. I'm just going to make a comment while we're getting your internet set. Maria, I'd like to follow the same process you and I have done the last several years, where you and I will physically sit together and do this together.
Absolutely. I offer that to all as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. How's that? Is that my connection?
He's out.
Irfan, you're in charge again.
Yeah. Ms. Lafreniere, you have any comment?
I missed a lot of that. It just went out, so.
Okay, looks like that show's back. But he's muted.
All right. Sorry about that. How's that? A little better?
Yeah, that's much better.
All right. So in case I lose you again, board, are you good with having all that information returned back to Maria by May 4? We can get with Maria by May 4. That'll give her 2 weeks to compile the information, get it to us before our May 18 meeting. Is everybody good with that?
Okay.
Okay. Miss Maria, you're good with those dates?
Yes.
Okay. So I think we're all set on that, aren't we?
I believe so.
Okay.
We don't need a motion or anything like that, so we're good. Great.
Yes, that's, as I understand it, that's correct.
All right, Maria, so you get that information out to us as quickly as possible so we can get it back as possible.
Absolutely, will do.
Excellent. Thanks, Maria. Appreciate it. All right, so the 2021 annual town meeting and special town meeting. Tonight, the board will review the special draft. Review the draft special town meeting warrant and conditionally vote to sign the warrant if no additional articles are submitted between now and April 23. If additional articles are submitted, we'll vote to sign the warrant again on April 24. Review the special town meeting articles submitted by the school committee and take any action necessary regarding its placement on the special town meeting warrant, including forming an elementary school building committee relative to the Elmwood Elementary School, and to review the draft motions for the annual town meeting warrant and discuss its presentations. Mr. Kamalu.
Mr. Chair, through you, to date, we have received 2 articles for the special town meeting. The first one is the extension to the means tested senior citizen property tax exemption, which was the main reason why the board agreed to schedule the special town meeting within the annual town meeting. Most recently, we received a request through our colleagues from the school department and the school committee requesting an article that will authorize the appropriation of funding to look into the Hopkinton Elementary School building in terms of whether it does meet its current functions and programming needs, following a decision by the MSBA to invite the school department and the town into the eligibility period. The article simply identifies the appropriation, borrowing, transfer of funds from, in fact, in this case, we've discussed the school department stabilization fund to be expended under a Hopkinton Elementary School Building Committee number 2. And I believe the school superintendent, the school committee chair, and Susan Rothermick are available to explain to the board how we got here.
Okay. If you guys want to liven those guys up, board, I'm assuming that you are fine with those three having access and having a discussion with us? Good. So Dr. Kavanaugh, if you would please.
Certainly. I want to be clear about why we're asking for this now, because I think that's a great big piece of this puzzle. The MSBA normally invites people into sort of that pipeline, this period of eligibility, which is what we are in now. They usually do that early in December. But because of the pandemic, we were unsure in December whether any district would be invited in. We learned only a couple of weeks ago that they would be holding a hearing on last Wednesday, April 14th. And at that hearing, Hopkinton was invited in, not yet for feasibility, but for eligibility. So the period that we are currently in is eligibility. The problem that we have is that feasibility happens after 270 days, which takes Hopkinton to about January 28th. And so because there is no town meeting between May 8th and January 28th, we are looking to have this article go on your special town meeting warrant so that when January comes around, we have our feasibility funding in place. And just to be clear, this is only funding for feasibility, and this funding, should we continue on with the MSBA, is reimbursable at whatever rate Hopkinton proceeds with.
Okay. So thank you. So Dr. Kavanaugh, just to kind of go back, we've been, as a town, have approved the request for that, I believe it's the MOI, or no, sorry, the SOI to the MSBA for years on Elmwood schools. So we were just, we were finally chosen after have repeated, attempts to get approved on this, correct?
Yes, I believe the earliest year you applied for Elmwood was 2008.
That was not me. That was probably Mr. Herr. He's the only knucklehead that was on the board way back then. Okay, so this is something that we've been kind of shooting at for 13 years now, and it's finally kind of come to fruition, where we're accepted to for that feasibility study.
Yes, we have to go through 270 days of tasks around eligibility, and should we surmount those, we will enter into feasibility in January. Just to be clear with this whole group too, this might be an important piece for me to add. MSBA is very prescriptive about their timeline. So we have no wiggle room with that. What they have shared with us is that the town of Hopkinton couldn't really be putting a shovel in the ground before July of 2023. So just in terms of, the funding along the way, right now what we're looking for is funding for feasibility. But that is a very long way away from actually building a school. And that actually requires a vote of the entire community to build a school.
Yep. Thank you, Dr. Kavanaugh. Amanda, Ms. Fargiano, anything to add on that, or are you good?
I'm good. I think Dr. Kavanaugh covered it. Thank you.
Great. Board members, any questions?
Just one quick one. Dr. Kavanaugh, I believe you said that the feasibility study money would be reimbursable. Like if we are approved, that money would come back to us, correct?
Yes, the entire amount would not. It would be, you would get back whatever rate we have been accepted at. And typically that's around 30 to 35% for the entire project. So, that's how it worked out with Marathon School in terms of the reimbursement rate.
Okay, good.
Mr. Herr?
So Amanda, the school committee is good with the funding source being named as the school stabilization fund for this expense, correct?
Yes, we voted this at our last meeting last Thursday, and we talked about it. We felt that, given the economic situation in the town, a lot of people are suffering from the pandemic. It's been a difficult year. It's a difficult time. A lot of the need for the Elmwood, in addition to the fact that the building was built in 1964 and has a lot of, structural sort of issues, we also have a lack of space from our enrollment growth. So we felt that using a one-time funding source to invest in building capacity to support our growth was a reasonable and logical use of those funds, and we did vote to do so.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's a good way to use those funds. Mr. Tedstone, to your point, we had an elementary building school committee in place in 2005 and 2006, I think. I was on that elementary school building committee. So that was one. Marathon really was two, and then this would be three in terms of elementary school building committees. But Mr. Kamalo, we don't have ESBC 3 in place right now, do we?
We do not. And in fact, the superintendent race office, Brendan and I will continue talking about how we get there.
Because that has to be a named body when you go back to the MSBA with this approved vote, doesn't it?
Correct, including when we go to town meeting. The article that is before you tonight does provide a specific name to that committee, for that committee.
So we have to constitute and appoint people to that committee here in the next 2 meetings.
Leading to town meeting, I will say. Again, we just started this conversation late Friday. We are in the middle of identifying what that committee might look like, what type of a charge will go alongside that. And the superintendent and I are working diligently to get something ready.
So I'm in favor of all this, but to say it's rushed is not an understatement. I think we're kind of all jumping through a hoop here. I get the timing of it and the January deadline and so forth, but we have a lot to do here the next 3 weeks.
Yeah, absolutely correct, Mr. Hay. I think what needs to be conveyed to the public is the reason why we are moving at this frantic pace is all because of COVID-19, which altered the schedule that the MSBA normally would follow.
Okay, I'm good. Dr. Kavanaugh's got 20 questions, I think, over there.
No, I only wanted to comment saying that when you're in the period of eligibility, the MSBA gives you 60 days to organize your school building committee. And we did work very hard with the town's legal counsel, the school's legal counsel, and MSBA's legal counsel to come up with the name, the Elementary School Building Committee 2. And as Mr. Kamalo said, we will work very hard. Hopefully we'll have that entire committee put together before town meeting, but the MSBA will give us 60 days.
Okay, I'm good. All set, thanks.
Thank you.
I have a question. Now, weren't we talking about modular classrooms over at Elmwood and some other things, and now we're talking about a new school? I'm confused.
That is correct. Right now, the Elmwood School actually has 6 modular classrooms attached to it, 2 that have been there for, I believe, close to 20 years, if not longer, and 4 new ones that have just gone on. And I know that people in the community probably want to know why we are putting modular classrooms on a school that potentially we would be taking offline. And I say repeatedly that the modular classrooms that you see attached to Elmwood today are filled. The kids that we have here in front of us are occupying those classrooms. We needed them just to be able to run that school. If you go into Elmwood, you'll see that we have kids who are learning still today in hallways, kids who are learning in these very small spaces that at one time were probably offices or maybe even closets, and I that's not an exaggeration. So, as we look at the age and the infrastructure of the building, it really does need replacement. And we will be monitoring carefully the enrollment growth in that building as we go through this process. Typically, from the date that you are entered into the eligibility period, which is last Wednesday, it's about 5 years before you open your doors. So there are 5 years between now and when there may be a new school, and we'll just be looking at the enrollment growth to see where that takes us over the next 5 years.
Senator Bush.
Yeah, I think I read the news article about the school committee meeting, and I think it makes a lot of sense to do it at this special town meeting rather than to have a different special town meeting, just to call one just for this. And I know we weren't expecting it, but we've seen in the growth study committee, I think they've had, 579 kids from legacy farms for the last few years. So definitely this needs to be looked at and studied, and, and we'll get a better idea of enrollment next year. Enrollment's a little artificially low this year because of the pandemic. So I'm glad it's a slow, methodical process, but I do think it's important to have a special town meeting this year.
All right, so I will request a motion to sign the May 8, 2021 special town meeting warrant with the articles shown on the current draft, provided that no additional articles submitted before the warrant closes on April 23.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Mr. Kamalo, do you feel pretty good that we're all shut down on other articles? Has everyone got the message, you think?
I hope so.
All right, Mr. Nasrullah, how do you vote?
Nasrullah, yes.
Mr. Herr?
Herr, yes.
Mr. Lafreniere?
Frenier, yes.
Ms. Ritterbush?
Ritterbush, yes.
And Mr. Tedstone, yes. Thank you, Dr. Kavanaugh. Board members, have you had an opportunity to review the annual town meeting draft motions? And are there any questions on them? Mr. Kamala, do you have any updates on the articles or motions?
Not really. Other than I'm still waiting for board members to volunteer to present the articles that are listed. 1, 7, 38, 39, 40, 41, and 42.
Yeah, we're not going to do that tonight. We can do that offline. We can have you coordinate a sign up list of if anybody wants anything, and specifically we can take care of that offline.
Do you want us to just email you and then you can coordinate?
Yeah, please email your preferences.
Okay.
Okay, and which articles do we need to present? It's in the
It's in the
number
script.
1, number
it's
7,
in the script. Okay.
38, 39, 40, 41, 42.
Okay.
Mr. Kamala, your town manager report, please.
Through the chair, I have nothing new to report.
Great. Liaison reports, board invitees. Mr. Nasrullah, oh, does anybody have anything?
Nothing on my end.
Okay. Future board agenda items?
Oh,
Nothing?
actually, I have one thing. The EHOP forum is coming up on May 3rd, and at the last meeting, Mr. Ted said he wasn't sure he could attend, but maybe he would send Mr. Nasrullah instead, and I didn't know if that had been figured out yet.
No, I won't know for a little while. I have some stuff up in the air, so I'm not positive if I can be there, but by his lack of showing up at the last time, Mr. Nasrullah wound up being
volunteered.
So number 2 guy.
So technically, Mr. Chair, EHOP is not a government body, and we're not obligated to do anything there if you don't want to. I'm sure it's a nice thing to do, but it's not like it's a liaison thing that we have to participate in.
Yeah,
I like it, but I'm just saying.
Yep. Okay. So Mr. Nasrullah, if you would do my favorite motion of the evening.
I move to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Nasrullah, how do you vote?
Nasrullah, yes.
Mr. Herr?
Herr, yes.
Mr. Frenier?
Frenier, yes.
Ms. Ritterbush?
Ritterbush, yes.
Redstone, yes. Good night. Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Yeah.